How comes a breakaway Shia sect was able to steal the black stone in the Kaaba and take control of the Haram area when Allah previously destroyed approaching army of birds dropping pellets? Why didn't Allah send pellets on those that mutilated the black stone? Akbar has asked a very interesting question. That's an amazing question. Ifzal has said Mufti is a legend. Wah, Ifzal ji, Meri Jaan. Right, may Allah bless you. Ameen, ameen. Right, so this is a very interesting question, people. I want you to pay attention to this. Suratul Fil. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Do you not see how your Lord did with the people of the elephant, which was Abraha, the Abyssinian who'd come over. Now, this thing, why is it that happened there and it didn't happen with the Qaramita? So the Qaramita were a sect, a subsect within the Shia. So you have the Shia, and then within them you've got a subsect of the, I believe non-existent today, but the Qaramita of the Shia. Now there was a time when they attacked, Mecca and nicked, they stole the black stone. There goes the black stone. It's going off. And they ran away with it, and they kept it for over 2 decades. Billy is in the house. All right, doing it, Billy, doing it. So the Qaramita kept the black stone for over 2 decades, and eventually some of the Muslims did manage to capture it, but it was broken and smashed, and then they just brought back retrieved pieces of this black stone. Even today, the black stone is just small pieces. It's not actually the actual black stone. So the black thing that you have is not actually the black stone. If you look into it, you're going to see small kind of just pieces of shiny black stone against a greater black setting. The black setting is not the black stone, it's only those pieces in there. So, and you can Google it. Right, now that is, so first of all, about the Qaramita stealing the black stone, that is a fact, that they did steal the black stone, and they kept it for a few decades. A quick point on what is the black stone. The black stone, people, is nothing sacred, okay? We need to understand that, okay? I think it's important. There is no true sanctity to the black stone. The only thing was that the black stone happened to be in the Kaaba, and the Kaaba happened to be the place which is the Qibla for the Muslims, which has then been made as the Qibla for Muslims and is attributed to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So what we do know is that these practices, these rituals were affirmed, as in acknowledged by Islam, and therefore kept alive and validated. There is no, this black stone thing, most likely, okay, so brace yourselves, people, brace yourselves. This is no need to get scared, by the way, when I say this. Right, this is when you say brace, brace. There's going to be some turbulence, some turbulence. So the black stone most likely was part of a pagan god. But it most likely was associated, by association, part of a pagan god culture in pre-Islamic times. So we know that in Petra, the main god, which some argue is Hubal, or what they called, they also refer to him as Dhushara or Dushera. Now, and some have argued he's the same as Baal Shamin, but the point is that the main god that they had was a big black stone. Okay, now this black stone that they had as the main god, to represent the main god, was then also replicated later on in the, because remember, Petra is probably where all Arabs kind of centuries before, because this is hundreds of years before Islam. So we're maybe talking, I don't know, maybe 600 years before Islam at this point. These are the people that really set up, that kind of form that legacy that other Arabs then start to copy. Okay, they are like from the Arab, they are Arabesque. They're not from, they claim their lineage to be from one of the children of Ismail, but not the one the Arabs come through. So they are like, they used to speak Aramaic, but they used to write in their script is today the Arabic script. That's where they kind of get it from. The Arabs got it from. So Petra, we know that they were like the kind of capital that other Arabs later took from. Now, we know that in the centuries that followed, Petra obviously lost its importance. It was not, in the time of the Prophet, Petra was not an important place at all. But other places were, like Hira, which had taken a lot from Petra, and were the offspring of the Arabs that later ruled Petra, the Tanukhiyin, and then you have the Lakhmiyin. But I don't want to get distracted here. But the point is, many places took a black stone figure as a god. Many of them, including Ta'if, close to Mecca, had a big cube, a black cube, which they addressed as the god Lat, and they would put a cloth over Lat, and it was also a cube kind of object. In some ways a bit similar to, I suppose, presumably maybe the Kaaba, but probably a bit smaller. Now, this kind of figure, and there were probably about 20 different Kaabas that emerged. So the Kaaba in Mecca was not the only Kaaba, okay? But the Kaaba in Mecca is, by our understanding, we claim that legacy belonged to Ibrahim alayhi salam. The other Ka'bat, they were just dedicated to their gods. They weren't dedicated. So the one in Ta'if was dedicated to Lat, and these other ones were dedicated to other gods. They weren't dedicated just to like Allah in that sense. Okay. Whereas the Kaaba is dedicated to Allah, the one in Mecca that we have today. So the black stone, most likely that many of these places had a black stone, which was usually one of their gods. So it's very likely that the black stone was probably a remnant of that over time lost its importance. So like what happened is maybe the Quraysh incorporated it into the corpus of the Kaaba, the body of the Kaaba, and then over time it was just seen as a holy special stone, and it lost that importance as the god. Just as Safa and Marwa were two gods. It was Isaf and Naila. They were two lovers that came and apparently, committed two gods that had sex in front of the Kaaba, and they weren't meant to, and therefore they were turned to stone. And therefore people did the running between them as a form of a kind of expression of their love, I guess. And also a remembrance that you're not meant to do certain things in front of the Kaaba. But over time, that meaning kind of got lost, and then people just stuck with the general ritual. And so what happens is that this is why many of the Ansar from Medina, when they came to Mecca, they refused to do the Safa and Marwa. So Qurtubi and all these people bring it because they said that this was a practice that Quraysh invented and the Arabs invented from Jahiliyyah. It was to do with Naila and Isaf, the goddesses, the god and the goddess. It's nothing to do with Islam. So, and Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so they refused, and this was many of the Sahaba, they said that we won't do the Safa Marwa thing. This is not, this is from pagan practices. But then there's the verse in the Quran saying that, look, but that meaning has gone now. And this is why when I say to people about things like Halloween and Christmas, and people get off, they flare up. Like, oh my God, Halloween. But its original practice hundreds of years ago was to do with witches. And you say, well, but then Safa Marwa most likely was to do with gods and goddesses, pagan gods. It wasn't like, the point is that this, you see, it had lost its practice, and then hence this verse of the Quran that inna safa wal marwata min sha'airillah, that now it is deemed a remembrance of Allah. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ بِهِمَا, so who today understands them to be symbolic of a worship to God. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ, this is not from, the term taw'iyan, this is not from taw', that don't understand this to mean voluntary. It's because Safa wal Marwa is not voluntary in neither Umrah nor Hajj. So it's لَيْسَ مَنْ تَطَوَّعَ بِهِمَا كَمَنْ تَنَفَّلَ بِهِمَا, لا يعني من تنفل بهما, يعني من حسبهما طاعة لله, that whosoever considers them to be a worship for Allah, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ, then indeed Allah is grateful for them, towards them for their worship. Because, so in a similar way, the black stone was most likely was part of a pagan god practice, but in the generation, maybe just before the Prophet and so on, it had lost that importance, but it was still kept as a holy thing. They don't know why it was obviously the pagans probably knew why it was holy, but they generally was just seen revered. So Muslims kept that practice that, you know what, we'll just leave it there in the Kaaba, and they'll use it as a point. So the Prophet would do the Raf al-Yadayn, begin, so when you're doing the tawaf, it's a point to symbolize something. That's all. It has nothing holy or special. It is not a stone from God. It may have been a meteorite. Most of the black stones, by the way, that the Arabs used to use for their gods were black because they were volcanic kind of remnants. That's why. So the black stone may also be a volcanic remnant, or it may be a meteorite. I think it's definitely one of those two. The Saudis unfortunately won't let people conduct any tests on it. It's a shame, but I wish they did, so we could know what it was. So the fact that the Qaramita took it away and broke it and whatever, in all honesty, is no big deal. I mean, it's not a nice thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a nice thing, but it's not something like, oh my God. In fact, Sayyidina Umar said that, I know that you're just a hajar, you're just a stone. لا تنفع ولا تضر. You cannot cause me any harm. You cannot cause me any benefit. This was the statement of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an. And he said that, yes, but I saw the Prophet out of I saw him kiss you, so I'm just going to do that. Now remember, the Prophet never taught them that the black stone was holy, but out of the Prophet's general upbringing and the Prophet's general practice, that since the stone just now symbolized the house, the Kaaba symbolized Baytullah, and this was a part of it, that practice, the Prophet kissed it, just as a ritual. It was not something done as this is a holy stone. It was not a holy, and it is not a holy stone. It is just a stone. There is nothing special about it apart from that it's got this history associated with it. Muslims today are obviously crazy over it. They beat the hell out of each other to get to the black stone. Which at some point, I guess, in time was perhaps a pagan god. No, I'm joking. But it's amazing, huh? That people, they beat themselves and they do all this to get to it. But there's no harm in these things, because today, what does it symbolize? It symbolizes a ritual to God. And we as Muslims, we submit with that ritual, and that's fine. That's what it is. That's all it is, a submission. It's not really, you gotta be, this is where these other stories all fall apart. Oh no, that this is what it was, and there was when you go from the Kaaba up, there's going to be the other Kaaba, there's going to be this heaven right above it, there's going to be all these old stories. None of these things are real. I mean, and the problem with all this kind of belief is when you look into the evidence, it's going to all fall apart. And And then if you believe so firmly in these little folk tales, your iman might collapse. It might not. I mean, because once you realize, well, actually, this is just all stories. So this is why I feel it's better to go with the truth. Seek the truth, people, and the truth shall set you free. Allah, Allah.